much for that kind welcome. The hour of convening has arrived, finally, and the Senate will come to order. This time I'd ask that any unauthorized persons exit our beautiful chamber and go visit the House. It's my distinct honor to recognize the distinguished. Hopefully we have a seat by a window this evening. Talking to you. Oh. I get to recognize the rules chairman. We're going to dinner.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a glorious day. Glad to be here with so many of my colleagues that aren't here yet. But moment in history. Call the cops. In 1886, the first batch of Coca-Cola is brewed in a backyard in Atlanta, Georgia by Dr. John Pemberton. And the senator from the 56 told me today is National Mom and Pop Business Owners Day. Also, something you don't know about the Appropriations Chairman, he is a big piano player, and today is Piano Day. He told me that from the recital he's planning on doing right after session. I made that up, actually. And I have a guest today, Mr. Stephen Henry, who is seeking my place, and I am supporting him, and he'll do a great job and be a great senator. Mr. President, the journal's been read and found to be correct.
A lot to unpack there. Thank you so much for all those incredible pearls of wisdom. And I'd ask this body, is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? The chair hears none, and the reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is also confirmed. All senators who have dreamed up any big ideas and have bills and resolutions, please bring them to the Secretary's desk at this time. I'm not certain how you can get it passed, but certainly try to bring it up at this time. Mr. Secretary, first reading in reference of House Senate bills and resolutions.
Senate Bill 642 by Senators James the 35th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to create Union City Public Facilities Authority to provide for severability.
State and local government.
Senate Resolution 802 by Senator Mullis of the 53rd, a resolution creating the Joint Study Committee on Transparency in High School Athletic Associations.
Rules.
Senate Resolution 803 by Senator Mullis of the 53rd, a resolution creating the Senate Study Committee on the Prevention of Unhealthy Puppies and Protection of Ethical Retail Sales and for other purposes.
Rules.
Senate Resolution 809 by Senators Burns of the 23rd and others, a resolution creating the Senate Development Authorities and Downtown Development Authorities Study Committee and for other purposes.
Rules.
Senate Resolution 818 by Senators Albers of the 56th and others, a resolution urging Cherokee County and the cities of Woodstock, Canton, Holly Springs, Ball Ground, and Waliska to adopt an annexation.
Slogo General.
Senate Resolution 819 by Senators Parent of the 42nd and others, a resolution recognizing and commending the American Society of Landscape Architects and for other purposes.
Rules.
Senate Resolution 820 by Senators Robin of the 5th and others, a resolution recognizing and commending the strong relations and continuous cooperation between.
Rules.
Senate Resolution 821 by Senators Robin of the 5th and others, a resolution recognizing and commending the country of Bangladesh and for other purposes.
Rules.
That completes the order, Mr. President.
First reading in reference of House bills and resolutions, please.
House Bill 1587 by Representative Saines of the 180th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act to create the Camden County Public Service Authority, approved.
Slogo.
House Bill 1590 by Representative Saine of the 180th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to repeal an act creating the Camden County Spaceport Authority, approved.
Slogo General.
House Bill 1592 by Representative Deloach of the 167th, a bill to be entitled an act to create the Long County Building and Public Facilities Authority to provide for disposition of property upon dissolution.
Slogo.
House Bill 1593 by Representatives Crowe of the 110th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act to provide for a new charter for the city of Jackson, approved September.
Slogo.
House Bill 1594 by Representative Mallow of the 163rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act governing the school system of the city of Savannah and Chatham.
Slogo.
House Bill 1595 by Representatives Bonner of the 72nd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act creating the State Court of Fayette County, approved April 13, 1994.
Slogo.
House Bill 1596 by Representatives Bonner of the 72nd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act creating the State Court of Fayette County, approved April 13.
Slogo.
House Bill 1597 by Representatives Bollinger of the 23rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to provide for a new charter for the city of Canton to provide
Slogo.
House Bill 1598 by Representative Burns of the 159th, a bill to be entitled an act to provide for a new charter for the city of Guyton to provide for severability.
Slogo.
That completes the order, Mr. President.
Ms. Secretary, will you please read reports of standing committees?
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Agriculture and Consumer Affairs has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation: that House Bill 1496 do pass by substitute, House Bill 1175 do pass by substitute, House Bill 1150 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Walker of the 20th District Chairman. Also, there is notice of a minority report filed with House Bill 1150. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Banking and Financial Institutions has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation: that House Bill 1008 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Brass of the 28th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Interstate Cooperation has under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation: that House Bill 1522 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator James of the 35th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation: that House Bill 689 do pass by substitute, House Bill 961 do pass, House Bill 1068 do pass by substitute, House Bill 1377 do pass by substitute, and House Bill 1528 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Strickland, the 17th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Public Safety has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation: that House Bill 202 do pass by substitute and House Bill 1553 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Albers of the 56th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Retirement has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation: that House Bill 824 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Robertson of the 29th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Rules has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation: that House Bill 200 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Mullis of the 53rd District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Science and Technology has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation: that House Bill 1217 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Dolezal of the 27th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State and Local Governmental Operations has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation: that House Bill 1062 do pass, House Bill 1323 do pass, House Bill 1325 do pass, House Bill 1326 do pass, House Bill 1327 do pass, House Bill 1328 do pass, House Bill 1492 do pass, House Bill 1493 do pass, House Bill 1497 do pass, House Bill 1536 do pass, House Bill 1539 do pass, House Bill 1550 do pass, House Bill 1551 do pass, House Bill 1552 do pass, House Bill 1562 do pass, House Bill 1577 do pass, House Bill 1581 do pass, House Bill 1585 do pass, Senate Bill 636 do pass, Senate Bill 639 do pass, Senate Bill 640 do pass, and Senate Bill 641 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Anderson of the 24th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Transportation has had under consideration the following legislation, has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation: that House Resolution 820 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Ginn of the 47th District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Education and Youth has had under consideration the following legislation, has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation: that House Bill 1215 do pass, House Bill 1482 do pass, House Bill 1283 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Payne of the 54th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Finance has had under consideration the following legislation, has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation: that House Bill 1437 do pass by substitute, House Bill 1421 do pass by substitute, House Resolution 732 do pass, House Bill 1428 do pass by substitute, House Bill 1291 do pass by substitute, and House Bill 1039 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Huffstetler of the 52nd District Chairman.
These are notice minority reports. Just go ahead and read them all.
Additionally, there is notice of minority reports for the following: House Bill 1437, House Bill...
It's just copies, that's it.
That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the distinguished rules chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent that the Senate Rules 3-1.2 be suspended to allow Senate Resolution 822 to be read the first read and referred to committee.
Mr. Secretary, please read the caption.
Senate Resolution 822, a resolution by Senator Mullis of the 53rd, a resolution creating the Senate Study Committee on Economic Development and International Relations and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
The senator from the 53rd has asked for unanimous consent that the rules be suspended to allow Senate Resolution 822 to be read for the first time and referred to a committee. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and it is assigned to the Rules Committee. Ms. Secretary, will you please read bills and resolutions for the second time?
House Bill 202 by Representatives Hitchens of the 161st and others. Georgia Drivers Education Commission, violation of traffic laws or ordinance under Joshua's Law, increase additional penalty. House Bill 689 by Representative Gaines of the 117th and others. Georgia Crime Information Center, persons who are victims of an offense on trafficking may petition to the clerk of court to have sealed certain criminal history record information provide. House Bill 824 by Representative Cantrell of the 22nd and others. Georgia Legislative Retirement System, retirement allowance increase. House Bill 961 by Representative Estration of the 104th and others. Torts, authorize apportionment of damages in single defendant lawsuits, provide for evidence of fault of non-parties. House Bill 1008 by Representative Hawkins of the 27th and others. Georgia Achieving a Better Life Experience, governance of a program by Board of Directors of Georgia Higher Education Savings Plan, provide. House Bill 1068 by Representative Leverett of the 33rd and others. State government, service of process for state court tort claims, revised provisions. House Bill 1150 by Representative Dickey of the 140th and others. Freedom to Farm Act enact. House Bill 1175 by Representative Perkle of the 155th and others. Georgia Raw Dairy Act enact. House Bill 1217 by Representative Irwin of the 28th and others. Student Technology Protection Act enact. House Bill 1377 by Representative Burchett of the 176th and others. Income tax equitable relief regarding failure of employers to comply with revenue provisions regarding employees. Authorized private causes of action. House Bill 1496 by Representative Gola of the 19th and others. Animals, sheriff impounding livestock running at large to donate livestock to an animal rescue organization or private individual authorized. House Bill 1522 by Representative Ridley of the 6th. Commerce and trade, certain additional information to be provided to beauty pageant contestants before accepting a fee require. House Bill 1528 by Representative Momtahan of the 17th and others. Commerce and trade, illegal for certain persons to purchase or attempt to purchase, possess, obtain, or sell used detached catalytic converters, provide. House Bill 1553 by Representative Crowe of the 110th and others. Bishop's Law enact. House Resolution 820 by Representative England of the 116th. James J. Boss Memorial Roundabout, Barrow County, dedicate. That completes the order, Mr. President. House Bill 428 by Representative Martin of the 49th and others. Sales and use tax, change certain definitions. House Bill 1039 by Representative Jackson of the 128th and others. Income tax expenditures on maintenance for Class 3 railroads and extend tax credit. House Bill 1215 by Representative Thomas of the 21st and others. Education, provision that reduce the amount of certain funding to state charter schools that offer virtual instruction, remove. House Bill 1283 by Representative Douglas of the 78th and others. Quality Basic Education Act, recess for students in kindergarten and grades 1 through 5, provide. House Bill 1291 by Representative Smith of the 133rd and others. Sales and use tax, exemption for sale or lease of commuter equipment of high technology companies, revise spending threshold, and extend sunset date. House Bill 1421 by Representative Buckner of the 137th and others. Conservation and natural resources, hazard waste trust fund, dedicate to proceeds of certain hazardous waste fees. House Bill 1437 of Representative Blackman of the 146 and others. Income tax, revised rates of taxation on income. House Bill 1482 by Representative Irwin of the 28th and others. Education eligibility criteria for public project specific capital outlay grants for low wealth school systems, revised. House Resolution 732 by Representative Martin of the 49th and others. Local government date temporary loans are payable from end of calendar year to fiscal year change. That completes the order, Mr. President.
All right, it's now time for morning roll call. It is now time for morning roll call. The chair recognizes the good senator from the 33rd who's still compiling his list over there.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, y'all. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the following senators for business outside the Capitol: 38, 17, 11, 35, and 22.
Without objection, the senators from the 38th, 17th, 11th, 35th, and 22nd are excused. The chair recognizes the senator from the 6th.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. President.
You're still compiling your list also.
I am. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 2nd and the 5th for business outside of the Capitol.
Without objection, the senators from the 2nd and the 5th are excused. The chair recognizes the senator from the 38th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am here. I have been sitting here. I am not a wallflower. Thank you very much.
Your presence is recognized. Thank you for joining us. You teleported into your seat. Chair recognizes the senator from the 44th.
I don't know. Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 55th.
Without objection, the senator from the 55th is excused.
I'm sorry, Mr. President, and the senator from the 43rd.
And in addition, the senator from the 43rd is excused with no objection. Are there any additional motions to excuse? Secretary will call the roll. Senators, signify your presence by voting the yea switch. The secretary will unlock the machine. What purpose does the senator from the 33rd rise?
Mr. President, I wanted to ask if it's still not too late to excuse the senator from the 42nd.
Unfortunately, it's too late. All right, it's now time for a morning devotional. And you know what that means? It's time to cease all those audible conversations. Senator from the 20th is going to pull a hamstring. He's running for the door so fast. Doorkeepers, please secure the chamber at this time. My honor to recognize the senator from the 23rd to lead us in our pledge and to introduce to us our chaplain of the day.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you'll join me as we pledge the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the Georgia flag. I pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag, to the principles for which it stands, with wisdom, justice, moderation, and courage. Colleagues, it's my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce to you today's chaplain. I have with me today Reverend David Young, who is the pastor of the Antioch Baptist Church in Harlem, Georgia. If you don't know where Harlem is, you've missed out. It's a great place in the western part of Columbia County. Pastor Young is a graduate of the Antioch Baptist Bible College. He has 8 children, of which 3 of them are here today. His wife Stephanie's here. We appreciate her being here. His son Ronnie, his daughter Elizabeth, you can wave, and his son Josiah. We're grateful for them. I want you to know that Pastor Young has done a tremendous job in ministering to the people of Harlem and Columbia County. He's a great friend. He's an advocate. He's a shepherd. And I am so grateful that he would take his time and come and share the word of God with us this morning. Please welcome Pastor David Young. Thank you, David.
Well, thank you. This morning I was asking them to make sure that they were not videoing this, because they said I had 7 minutes, and I do not want my church to find out that I can say anything in 7 minutes. But anyway, I want to thank my Senator Burns, and then our Lieutenant Governor as well, for allowing us to be here today. I was thinking as you speak as a preacher, I told one of the men a while ago, we have one of the only jobs in the world that you get paid more to do less. Everybody wants you out by 12 o'clock, and they will pay you more to make sure you get that done. And so that is kind of our job. And I began to think like this morning early as I was studying for today, and just the things that was brought to my mind. I was thinking about every week, and I want you to know that you that are sitting here this morning, every week, just about every service, you are brought up in our prayers at our church every week as leaders, and as you do your work for us. And we want to thank you from Antioch Baptist Church for your work in the labor that you do, a part that we cannot do. And so we pray for you, which is a command from God. If you don't know much about the Bible, it is a command from God, and so we try to do that. I'll be taking my verses out of Galatians chapter number 1 and read just a few verses this morning. And I hope in 7 minutes that you won't fall asleep. I heard years ago about a church that they had a man that slept all the time in service, and so finally they got the deacons a long stick, and they said the next time this guy goes to sleep, hit him in the back of the head. And so sure enough, the next service, this guy went to sleep, and the deacon hit him and woke him up a little bit, and he went back, and the guy went back to sleep again. And so when he went back to sleep, the deacon went back down and hit him real hard. And when he did, he knocked the guy out in the aisle, and the guy hollered, "Please hit me again, I can still hear him." And so I hope that that's not how it is this morning. Galatians chapter 1, just read 5 verses. Paul, an apostle, not of men, neither by man, but by Jesus Christ and God the Father, who raised him from the dead. For all the brethren which are with me unto the churches of Galatia, grace be to you and peace from God the Father and from our Lord Jesus Christ, who gave himself for our sins, that he might deliver us from this present evil world, according to the will of God and our Father, to whom be glory forever and ever. Amen. As I began to read this passage of Scripture, even yesterday, I began to think out of verse number 4, he gives us this thought, that he might deliver us, who gave himself for our sins, that he might deliver us. And I began to think about the importance of the delivered life, a life that has been delivered. I was sitting in my office some days ago with a young man in his 20s, and I was talking to him about being saved and the importance of being saved and giving your life to Jesus Christ. And he looked at me and he began to try to convince me that being saved and giving your life to Jesus Christ, that there was no change. I remember looking at him across my desk, and I said to him this. I said, "Please don't tell my daddy that Jesus isn't real." I said, "My dad used to be a drunk, and my dad didn't know the Lord, and Jesus one day met my dad, or my dad met Jesus and gave his life to the Lord, and God delivered him out of a past life." And I said, "It's been 51 years now that God has done that." And as I thought about the delivered life and being saved and giving your life to Jesus Christ, I thought about several things that happened in Paul's life. Paul said this. Paul said, "I am an apostle." Paul had a purpose in his life. When you have a delivered life, all of a sudden your purpose changes about everything that you do. You can be a plumber with a purpose. You can be a pastor with a purpose. You have a purpose life. Your life is so that Paul said, I am an apostle. I am doing my purpose in life because I have been delivered. I thought about my children, and I thought about the things that their life holds as they grow older and get careers and jobs. And I've taught them, no matter what you do in life, no matter what your job is, know that your purpose in life is not to be just a plumber, but your purpose in life is that you have been delivered, and you're trying to let others know that Jesus Christ is number one in your life. I notice this, not only is there purpose in a life that is delivered, but also he says, not of man. I'm not doing what I'm doing because of man. He said this, but by Jesus Christ and God the Father who raised him from the dead. And may I say this, if you're going to have a purpose in life, there's no doubt you've got to understand who you got to rely on for the power to make it happen. He says, I'm an apostle. This is what I'm doing because I have a delivered life. But I want you to understand, my delivered life is, and everything that you see good in me is because of the power of God. I got saved, I gave my life to Jesus Christ, and God has given me the power to be able to do what I do. I notice this, not only that, he says in verse 2, and all the brethren which are with me. May I say this morning, in the delivered life, God gives us partners, people to help us along the way. And I am very grateful for those that are saved this morning that have the same desires I have, and a purpose driven, and our life is so that we understand we have been delivered, and so now that we're delivered, those that are partners with us and help us and strengthen us to get the jobs done that we do on a daily basis. I noticed in verse number 3, he says this, grace be unto you and peace from God the Father. May I say this, number 4, in our life that is delivered by God, you and I have a peace that passes all understanding. People in the world that we live in, sometimes people, even as a pastor, they say, how do you cope with what's going on? How do you deal with the problems that you deal with every day? When the end of the day ends, there is a peace that only God can put and give in our lives. And then I thought about this in verse number 5. He talks about who gave himself for our sins. What a wonderful passage of Scripture, because as he writes this book of Galatians, the writer says it's our sins. And what he is allowing us to understand is there was a time in his life where God dealt with him and God delivered him from his sins. And may I say this today as I end, verse number 5, he said, to whom be glory forever and ever, amen. May I say this lastly, not only do we have a purpose in life and the power to obtain that purpose and partners to help us in the purpose and peace that God puts in our heart to be able to perform it. May I say this lastly, there will always be a praise on our lips because we know who it is that gives us the power. And may I say this before this day ends today, if you're saved, make sure that you, when this day's over, that you give the Lord praise for everything that's done. It's not in my power. It's not in your power. He said God delivered us. And may I end today by saying that let's live a delivered life. And if you're not saved, you don't know the Lord, can I tell you it's the greatest life that a person could ever live. Lord, if you would stand, let's pray. Lord, thank you for today and your blessings. And I pray and thank you for the opportunity to stand before these men and ladies that we pray for weekly. And God, the position they're in, the things that they do, God, I pray that today that you would help them and you would bless them. And God, you would give them a clear mind to make the decisions for our state that they do. And we'll thank you for what you do. In Jesus' name, amen.
senator from the 15th wants to speak too. Yeah, there he goes. And now that means the orange one means they want to come up and talk from the well. So that's how we manage all this. Double payback 30 more. All right, the Senate will reconvene or come back to order or something between those two. Are there any unanimous consents? Does any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? Chair recognizes the pro tem for a point of personal privilege. I'll recognize you during points of personal privilege.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I'm honored to host the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation visiting here today. In the gallery, we have retired banker and my longtime friend, Mike Whitmire. Mike, would you stand? His most important job is being grandfather to Sydney. And then we have Molly Taggart, who's the area director for Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. Stand up, Molly. There we go. And then we have Danielle Driggers, development director for the Georgia chapter. Thank you, Danielle. And Linda Murphy, senior development director for cystic fibrosis, and Kel Mackesy, cystic fibrosis adult. Thank y'all very much for being here. We appreciate the witness that you have for cystic fibrosis, and we look forward to the day when CF stands for Cure Found. And many people are living in Georgia, 30,000 in fact, impacted by cystic fibrosis on a day-to-day basis. And we appreciate y'all being here and appreciate what you do for our communities. Let's give them a warm Senate welcome. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Mr. President, I yield the will.
The chair recognizes the distinguished rules chairman for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. First off, I want to thank this chamber for being a pro-gun chamber, most of you. And I want to thank the NRA, the National Rifle Association, to be that group that is common sense and also pro-gun. Also, the Georgia Carry, which is now the 2A Association. They do a great job. But that other group, they're a bunch of idiots. The Georgia gun owners, they're crazy. All right, let me tell you what the plan is. The Senate bill is in a, thank you, Mr. President. The Senate bill is in a House. They're going to make it so that we will agree or disagree. The bill's not in the Senate, it's in the House. So wake up, learn your civics, and learn how the process is. That group is just simply trying to raise money from you. That's all. So all you weak-minded people that believe what the gun owners are telling you, they're crazy. They are just trying to raise money from you. That's it. So go ahead and believe that, and the members in this body and in the House will be passing pro-gun legislation without their help. In fact, in spite of their help. So you can continue to give that group money, which has no influence in this building. The NRA and the Georgia Carry folks, they do. The 2A amendment folks, they are the ones that we listen to. Not that crazy group. They're just a bunch of malcontent idiots that have no idea how this process works. So anyway, they can kiss my fanny and let's see, how can I put this? The Chickamauga Dam with them. Thank you. Have a good day.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 4th for a point of personal privilege. We're still adding up your demerits over here.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've got a great honor today in welcoming my doctor today, Dr. John Odom. Dr. Odom was born and raised in South Georgia. Dr. Odom graduated from Georgia Southwestern College in Americas in 1977. He went on to attend the University of Guatemala and graduated from New York Medical College in 1983, where he completed a residency in general surgery. He then went on to perform his fellowship at the University of Medicine and Dentistry of New Jersey in 1990. He had served in the United States Army. He then moved to Savannah to begin his practice and since then has called it home. Dr. Odom is a renowned general surgeon, managing partner of Metro Surgical, former chief of staff and board member of Candler St. Joseph Hospital, and he's director of Rural Surgical Fellowship Program supported by this body at Wayne Memorial Hospital, Effingham Health Center, Scriven Hospital, Coffee County Hospital, and in South Carolina. Please stop by the medical aid station and welcome Dr. John Odom. Thank you, Dr. Odom. Yeah. Mr. President, I yield the will.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, my fellow senators, colleagues, and the rest of y'all. I want to commemorate those who fought in the Vietnam War on National Vietnam War Veterans Day, which is today, March 29th. There's no doubt that the Vietnam War was one of the most brutal. In fact, over 3 million people were killed during the 20 years it went on. It was also known as the Second Indochina War to Americans, and considered its long fighting time and brutality. National Vietnam War Veterans Day was created to honor all the men and women who fought during its time. The Vietnam War has a long history. It was one of the longest wars in America, starting in 1955. The war went on until 1975, making it the second longest war aside from the ongoing Afghan war. Over 2.7 million Americans served this war. In 1973, in all, combat and support units withdrew from Vietnam following the war, but it continued to have an impact on many of the families and people affected by the war. National Vietnam War Veterans Day is acknowledged, as I said, every March 29th, honoring anyone who served during this 20-year time. If you see a veteran today, thank them for their service, and if they served in the Vietnam War, give them a hug. Mr. President, I yield well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 2nd for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of this esteemed body, today we have an opportunity to recognize a true Georgia celebrity. Ms. Marlo Hampton of the Atlanta Housewives is with us today. This morning, she was recognized as a Georgia Goodwill Ambassador, not for her work as a celebrity and a television star, but for her commitment to children. Ms. Hampton has a foundation that helps foster day care kids. She herself was a foster child, but she did not let that stop her. She has moved this state with children, with passion, with purpose and vision. And we are a better state because of her movement with children, of her movement with this community. She once told a group of folks that the test of a woman is not by what she have, but what she's willing to give. Ms. Hampton has given to Georgia, has given to this community. That's why she's a Goodwill Ambassador for our great state. May we recognize Ms. Hampton. Mr. President, I yield the will.
Thank you, Senator. I have a quick point of personal privilege. I'd like to recognize a very special guest with us here today. I've got my sister. Go ahead, they can't see you back there. My sister, Jennifer Amberg, is with us here today. She is an assistant principal at Otwell Middle School in Forsyth County, and she's going to spend the day with. I can think of no worse job that I could be at than being an assistant principal in a middle school, but she does a great job. Thank you for joining us today, and thanks for all that you've done along the way. You don't have to wave any campaign signs this year. We're not running. All right, you've got a consent calendar of privilege resolutions before you. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? Is there objection to adoption of the resolutions on the consent calendar? The chair hears. What purpose does the senator from the 10th rise?
Mr. President, I
rise to ask to remove HB 1577 from the local consent calendar.
Can you repeat the number?
HB 1577.
So that's the next, that's a local bill, that's the next process. This is the consent calendar. We'll get to you in a second. Is there objection to adoption? For what purpose does the senator from the 33rd rise?
Mr. President, I'm not sure if this is the proper time, but I'd like to excuse the senator from the 33rd and the 42nd.
I was going to say, you're from the 33rd. You can't excuse yourself. Go ahead and start again.
I forgot to sign in this morning. But the senator from the 42nd for business outside the
Without
Capitol.
objection, the senator from the 42nd is excused. Third time's a charm here. Is there objection to adoption of the resolutions on the consent calendar? The chair hears none, and the resolutions on the consent calendar are adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw and commit? Chair recognizes the senator from the 56th for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that Senate Resolution 818 be withdrawn from the Committee on Slow-Go General and be committed to the Committee on Rules.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Resolution 818?
Senate Resolution 818 by Senators Albers of the 56th and others, a resolution urging Cherokee County and the cities of Woodstock, Canton, Holly Springs, Ball Ground, and Molesca to adopt annexation growth boundary agreements and joint land use plans and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Have you spoken to both chairmen and gotten their agreements? Senator from the 56th has asked for unanimous consent that Senate Resolution 818 be withdrawn from the Committee on State and Local Government General and be committed to the Committee on Rules. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and it is moved. You have a consent calendar of local bills before you. Mr. Secretary, are there any objections filed to any bills on the local consent calendar?
Mr. President, there is an objection filed to House Bill 1577 by Senator Jones of the 10th, Senator Jackson of the 41st, and Senator Davenport of the 44th.
All right, there is an objection to House Bill 1577, so it will be removed from today's local consent calendar and be voted on separately. Is there objection to agreeing the report of the Committee on State and Local Government, which is favorable to the passage of the bills on the local calendar? For what purpose does the senator from the 10th rise? He waves. The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. The questions on the passage of the bills on the local calendar. All those in favor vote yea, opposed nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar, the yeas are 48, the nays are 1, and the bills having received the requisite constitutional majority are therefore passed. All right, we're now going to move on to the local contested calendar. For what purpose does the senator from the 10th rise?
Mr. President, yes, we ask unanimous consent to table House Bill 1577.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption to House Bill 1577?
House Bill 1577, a bill by Representatives Davis of the 87th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act creating the State Court of DeKalb County, formerly known as the Civil and Criminal Court of DeKalb County, approved February 14, 1951, is amended particularly by an act approved April 11, 2012, so as to provide a fee for the removal of certain personal property following execution of writs of possession and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State and Local Governmental Operations recommend that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Anderson of the 24th District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
The senator from the 10th has asked for unanimous consent that House Bill 1577 be placed on the table. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and it is placed on the table. For what purpose does the majority whip rise?
Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent that the bills that were passed on the local consent calendar be immediately transmitted to the House.
The majority whip has asked for unanimous consent that the bills that were just passed on the local calendar be immediately transmitted to the House. Is there objection? Chair hears none, and they will be immediately transmitted. Chair continues to recognize the majority whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent that the following bills be engrossed: House Bill 586, House Bill 1053, and House Bill 302.
Ms. Secretary, can you please read the captions to all three measures?
House Bill 586, a bill by Representatives Watson of the 172nd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 1 of Article 1 of Chapter 8 of Title 48 of the OCGA relating to general provisions regarding sales and use taxes so as to extend the sunset date for the exemption of projects of regional significance and for other purposes. House Bill 302, a bill by Representatives Montahan of the 17th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 13 of Title 48 of the OCGA relating to general provisions regarding specific business and occupation taxes so as to require that the proceeds of local government regulatory fees be used to pay for regulatory activity and not general operations and for other purposes. House Bill 1053, a bill by Representative Stevens of the 164th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 7 of Title 48 of the OCGA relating to imposition, rate, computation, exemptions, and credits for state income tax, so as to extend a tax credit for certain expenditures made by post-production companies and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
The majority whip has asked unanimous consent that the following bills be engrossed: House Bill 586, House Bill 1053, and House Bill 302. Is there objection? There is objection. Would the majority whip like to speak to his engrossments? He waives. Would the minority leader like to speak to her objection? She waives. All those in favor of engrossing the three House bills vote yea. Opposed, nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the motion, the yeas are 29, the nays are 20, and House Bill 586, House Bill 1053, and House Bill 302 have been engrossed. Chair recognizes the majority whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the first for business inside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the first is excused. We are now moving on to the ever-important rules calendar. We are moving on to the rules calendar. Ms. Secretary, can you please read the caption of House Bill 586?
House Bill 586, a bill by Representatives Watson of the 172nd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 1 of Article 1 of Chapter 8 of Title 48 of the OCGA relating to general provisions regarding sales and use taxes, so as to extend the sunset date for the exemption of for projects of regional significance and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Finance recommend that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Huffstetler, the 52nd District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Finance has offered the following substitute to House Bill 586, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 48 of the OCGA relating to revenue and taxation so as to extend the automatic repeal of a sales tax exemption for sales of tickets, fees, or charges for admission to certain fine arts performances or exhibitions, to revise the period for applications for the tax credit for qualified donations of real property to provide for an aggregate cap and further purposes. Additionally, there is a fiscal note attached. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 51st to speak to House Bill 586.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Senators. Senate Bill 586 is a bill that you've seen in the past. It's a sales tax exemption, and all this bill does is extends the sunset an additional 5 years. It deals with two parts. One part is on the conservation tax credits that will be used to protect land that would be either in wetlands or natural habitats, agricultural lands or forests and outdoor recreational areas around the state. This has been a very effective program over the years that helps preserve some of our most beautiful assets in Georgia. We want to continue this program. That's why the 5-year extension is requested in this bill. The other section of the bill is a sales tax exemption on the tickets of performing arts centers and visual arts in our state. Throughout Georgia, we have 471 nonprofit visual and performing arts centers that allows for small communities like Dahlonega or Cumming or other places that would help with performing arts. This bill also applies from big cities as well as in Atlanta, Athens, Roswell, Marietta, and throughout the rest of the state, cities like Savannah as well. It benefits all of Georgians. We are dead last in the funding of our public arts in our state, so this sales tax exemption will be a big benefit to those performing arts without a lot of expenditures to the state budget. Mr. President, I'm happy to yield for any questions.
You don't appear to have any questions.
Thank you very much.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 586? The chair sees none. The question's on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? The chair hears none, and the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Question on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 50, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Ms. Secretary, please read the caption of House Bill 476.
House Bill 476, a bill by Representative Washburn of the 141st and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 15 of Title 43 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to professional engineers and land surveyors so as to provide that the Georgia Professional Engineers and Land Surveyors Board is an independent state agency attached to the Secretary of State for administrative purposes only, to provide a short title, to provide definitions, to provide for the powers and duties of the board, to authorize the board to employ an executive director, to provide for the powers and duties of the executive director, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Cowsert of the 46th District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 56th to speak to House Bill 476.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 476 simply deals with our professional engineers and land surveyors. Currently, they're governed under what's called the Pels Board, which has existed since 1937. This bill would simply take the Pels Board into a separate budgetary unit administratively attached to the Secretary of State's office, the very same way you're probably familiar we handle accountants and dentists and pharmacists and realtors. All the costs are fully funded by the annual renewal fees by the professional engineers, land surveyors, and their respective firms. There is no cost to taxpayers. This is a great way for them to make sure they have dedicated staff in place to make sure there are no additional delays in renewing licenses and make sure that serious violations are being investigated and handled in a timely manner to protect everyone. Many of you are familiar with the Georgia Occupational Regulation Review Council, also called GORC, and this bill has been brought through them, and they simply stated that the state of the Board of Registration for Professional Engineers and Land Surveys is currently operated within the Office of the Secretary of State presents a potential for harm. There are instances which delays of enforcement for engineering and survey violations are a threat to public health and safety. Therefore, this bill is necessary. It's great for our small businesses. It's great for people in each and every one of your district. And I am proud to bring it before you and would ask for your favorable consideration. If there are no questions, I will yield the will.
You have no questions.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 476? The chair sees none. Is there objection to agreeing with the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 50, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption to House Bill 200?
House Bill 200, a bill by Representative Powell of the 32nd, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 40 of the OCGA relating to motor vehicles and traffic so as to provide for the issuance of a Class C driver's license to operators of certain three-wheeled motor vehicles, to exempt operators of certain three-wheeled motor vehicles from headgear and eye protective device requirements, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Rules recommend that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Melissa, the 53rd District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Rules Committee offers the following substitute to House Bill 200, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 40 of the OCGA relating to motor vehicles and traffic so as to provide for the issuance of a Class C driver's license to operators of certain three-wheeled motor vehicles, to exempt operators of certain three-wheeled motor vehicles from headgear and eye protective device requirements, and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
The chair recognizes the very busy Rules Chairman to present House Bill 200.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is about a three-wheeled vehicle. Some people call them trikes. If you see those motorized vehicles going down the road, and I don't mean a tricycle, but a three-wheeled motorcycle. It simply clarifies the definition of three-wheeled vehicle for the purpose of requiring a Class C driver's license and a Class M driver's license that meet such standards. Mr. President, it's that simple. Be glad to answer any questions, or I appreciate the Chamber's vote on this extremely important bill.
You did such a good job explaining that one. You have no questions.
Thank you very much.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 200? The chair sees none. The question's on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? The chair hears none, and the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agree on the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Question on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 46, the nays are 2. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of House Bill 1069?
House Bill 1069, a bill by Representatives Williamson of the 115th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 3 of Title 37 of the OCGA relating to examination, treatment, etc. for mental illness, so as to provide for the licensure of adult mental health programs, to provide for inspection by the Department of Community Health, to provide for an annual report, to provide for criminal background checks, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services recommend that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Watson, the 1st District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 18th to present the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. House Bill 1069 authorizes the Department of Community Health to classify all adult residential mental health programs within Georgia according to the character and range of the services provided. Adult residential mental health treatment centers need appropriate licensure standards that reflect and establish the therapeutic environment designed and operated by mental health professionals and that meet the unique needs of Georgians in treatment for psychiatric disorder facilities. Many insurers are denying claims for treatment at adult residential mental health programs because the programs hold personal care home licenses rather than the mental health treatment licenses. The current licensure information is that it's the adult residential health treatment programs are currently licensed as personal care homes. What this bill does is really thread the needle for licensure purposes between the personal care homes and then the fully blown hospitals or psychiatric treatment facilities. You may be familiar with some of these facilities that are available for children, but we don't have a licensure process for adults that are suffering from mental health care needs and the facilities and the type of care that these type facilities can provide. Mr. President, I'm happy to answer any questions, or I'll yield the well.
You don't appear to have any questions.
Thank you. I ask for your favorable support. Thank you.
Any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 1069? The chair sees none. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 50, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Ms. Secretary, can you please read the caption of House Bill 1053?
House Bill 1053, a bill by Representative Stevens of the 164th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 7 of Title 48 of the OCGA relating to the imposition, rate, computation, exemptions, and credits for state income tax, so as to extend a tax credit for certain expenditures made by post-production companies and for the purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Finance recommend that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Huffstetler, the 52nd District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Finance offers the following substitute to House Bill 1053, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 7 of Title 48 of the OCGA relating to income taxes so as to revise the definition and taxation of income of taxable non-residents with respect to the Georgia Entertainment Industry Investment Act and Georgia Entertainment Industry Post-Production Investment Act and for the purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 56th to speak to House Bill 1053.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 1053 simply extends the sunset on the film post-production tax credits, which started about 5 years ago to try and keep that in-house with the addition of all the work we've done with bringing films, commercial, and TV shows to Georgia. We amended this in the Senate Finance Committee to extend it for 2 years to give the opportunity to study that, as we all like to do here in the Senate, which is our posture to assure we have a return on investment and to assure in this bill there will be no transferability of tax credits. So if there are no questions, I'll yield the will.
You don't appear to have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 1053? The chair sees none. Questions on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee sub? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to the agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Question on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 50, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Ms. Secretary, can you please read the caption of House Bill 263?
House Bill 263, a bill by Representative Scroggins of the 14th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 47-11-71 of the OCGA relating to the amount of retirement benefits for judges of the probate courts, optional retirement benefits, and manner in which persons not eligible for maximum benefits at retirement may become eligible, so as to revise the method through which certain actuarial equivalents are determined and for the purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Retirement recommend that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Robertson of the 29th District Chairman. Additionally, there is a fiscal note attached. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 4th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, House Bill 263 does just one thing, only one thing. It allows for a more current mortality table for determining benefits for survivors of retired probate judges. The current table, if you can believe this, the current table that is being used was established in 1951, some 70-odd years ago. This will make the mortality table more in line with other retirement funds, and according to Greg Griffin, our state auditor, the actual impact on the probate courts retirement fund of Georgia is zero, no dollars involved. And also, this will become effective July 1, 2022. Colleagues, please vote yes on this important bill. And Mr. President, if I have no questions, I yield to Will.
You don't appear to have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 263? The chair sees none. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 50, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Ms. Secretary, please read the caption of House Bill 302.
House Bill 302, a bill by Representatives Momdahan of the 17th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 13 of Title 48 of the OCGA relating to general provisions regarding specific business and occupational taxes, so as to require that the proceeds of local government regulatory fees be used to pay for regulatory activity and not general operations, to revise the list of professions which may be subject to such regulatory fees and for the purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Finance recommend that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Huffstetler of the 52nd District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Finance Committee offers the following substitute to House Bill 302, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 13 of Title 48 of the OCGA relating to general provisions regarding specific business and occupation taxes, so as to require that the proceeds of local government regulatory fees be used to pay for regulatory activity and not general operations, to revise the list of professions which may be subject to such regulatory fees and for the purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
The chair recognizes the good senator from Roswell to present House Bill 302.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 302 was introduced in response to many cases in almost every district of burdensome and excessive regulatory fees that are not in compliance with our current state law and statute. The law currently states the amount a regulatory fee has to approximate the cost of the actual work and activity to be done. Now, all of us know in the last couple of years, costs have gone through the roof. In fact, in some cases with building materials, they are 2 or 3 times more expensive than they were just a year or two ago. That doesn't mean the permit should go up 2 or 3 times more expensive at the same time. Currently, state law allows for 6 methods to determine the amount of a regulatory fee. Multiple industry-related groups studied each one of these in the off-season to make sure that the excessive fees were analyzed and we came up with a better solution. This bill is a result of their hard work that they account daily in their respective industries. There are over 14 industry associations who worked on this and are supporting that. Please listen to this group because they are the ones that you represent. Conditioned Air Association of Georgia, Home Builders Association of Georgia, the Georgia Realtors, the Association of General Contractors, the Council for Quality Growth, the NFIB, Mechanical Contractors of Georgia, the Georgia Sheet Metal Association, Independent Electrical Contractors, and more. Some of the key provisions of this were made changes, and we worked in very good faith with both ACCG and GMA in order to make some of those changes. Section 1 simply strengthens current statute and gets rid of regulatory fees and activity that are no longer needed in the code or are reserved in other areas of the code. A list of professions and occupations that are changing. Several of these professions and occupations are no longer regulated locally, and this is simply a cleanup bill. Beginning on line 100, it lists the methods of which you can review current regulatory fees. This eliminates method 6, which was originally in the code, which was agreed upon by all parties, which is the cost of the job. This gets back to what I mentioned earlier. If materials have gone up 2 or 3 times more than they were a year or two ago, a permit should not go up 2 or 3 times either. That's hurting our small businesses. Next section allows 5 methods that are fair and applicable in order to regulate the cost of each one of those. One line in method 5 is stricken specifically, which is the cost of the job. A permit should not be tied to the cost of the job. A permit should be tied to the cost of the work in a break-even scenario. This was a request made by GMA and ACCG, which we agreed with and made the sub accompany what their desires were. And the last part of this, which I think is very important, and it's the one part they disagreed with, but I think is most important, is adding a reimbursement component. This allows those folks who I mentioned earlier appeal process to come back and say that if the cost of that permit was 120% more, that they have a process to come back and to look at that with the government agency, and if they overcharged them, they get a refund. Their only outlet today is to go to court. So think about that for a second. How many people in your district that are a small business owner can afford to go to court to do that? Almost none of them. This just simply gives them an outlet. And I will say that for 120% overage of the fee, there's no other place that you could have that much grace. And that was a compromise to help out those who had concerns. In conclusion, this strengthens state statute. The proceeds of regulatory activity cannot fund the general operations of government, just the regulatory part. This is already state statute, and this is making sure that nobody takes advantage of that, and we clean up the code in a time that our small businesses have been suffering and hurting during a recession and skyrocketing inflation. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'll yield for any questions.
You have a few questions. The chair recognizes the senator from the 36th to your left. She waves. Chair recognizes the senator from the 39th on your left.
Hello, Mr. Senator. Does the senator wave?
I always yield for my friend.
Okay, thank you. So current law requires that local governments that charge regulatory fees that reasonably approximate the cost of the actual regulatory activity. However, if you look at this bill on page 5, line 118, this bill actually allows for local governments to add up to a 20% tax increase on top of the cost of the regulatory activity.
Senator, I appreciate your question, but I believe you're reading that incorrectly. If you look above it where line 100 starts, it talks about the ways in which you can measure and come up with a fee schedule for the way that works. And if you read down from lines 100 down through lines 115, I think you'll see that. What line 116 forward brings in is if they overestimated that by more than 20%, they made an error, it creates an appeal process for those contractors to come back and to question that, and for them to open up the books and look at them in order for them to get any difference of the cost. But the breakdown of the cost is served under all the other different data, and let me specifically point you to lines 110 for construction process that are classified as new. The number of square feet can be used. It can be used with the International Code Council called the ICC, as well as hourly rates for those inspectors and that work for either cities or counties.
Thank you. Does the senator further yield?
Certainly.
So right now, is it not true that anybody who has a problem with what they think is being charged as an overcharge has cause of action and has an outlet to be able to get that resolved?
So today, their only outlet, Senator, is to go to court, right? And if you can imagine a small business of Georgia, most do not have the ability the time, resources in order to do that. This provides now a mechanism for them, if they believe they were overcharged, that they can go back to that governing authority and say, I believe this was too much, and they would have to then open up the books and show them, and if it was over 20% more, then they would give them a refund.
Does the senator further yield?
Certainly.
Is it not true that this bill actually forces cities to deviate from widely recommended and accepted method of calculating these fees by removing the ability to use the cost of the project for other construction activity without providing for a reasonable alternative?
Actually, Senator, I'm so glad you asked that question, because this is the actual crux of the bill. The problem today is if you base it just on the cost of the job, right? Let me give you an example. The cost of building materials for a home right now are sometimes 2 or 3 times more expensive than they were 18 to 24 months ago. And we can't then increase the cost of the permit by 2 or 3 times 18 months later, because the work to inspect that house didn't go up 2 or 3 times. What this keeps in here is the ability to use their hours, to follow the ICC guidelines, the square feet, and everything else. It takes away the very part that's being unfortunately abused and used incorrectly today. So thank you. That's a great question.
And one last question, if you'll yield.
I yield.
But isn't it true that ultimately for cities across this entire state, that this bill would require them to set up new systems and processes that would add dramatically to the costs that they will have to adhere to in order to be able to now regulate these fees? Isn't there systems that they will now have to invest in? Won't they now have to also create refund funds, basically, in order to anticipate these kinds of requests that may come to them, ultimately making it much more expensive for all of the cities across this state to be able to just do the simple business of permitting?
Well, Senator, actually, that's not true. And while I appreciate, I'm sure GMA's got some good talking points in that, it's just not adequate. The information that they're using is the same they have used forever. They only can't use the cost of the job anymore. All the other things were in code. It's always been in code that they have to make sure the regulatory fees are equal to the actual cost of what's there today. And if we think there's an additional cost when a city or a county overcharged a small business and they should refund them, I think that's a pretty good use of government transparency and accountability. And I think we all support our small businesses, and we would want them to have the benefit of that without having to go to court. Going to court would actually cost the cities a significant amount of money versus staying in the guidelines which the law already provides.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you continue to yield?
Certainly.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 6th to your right.
Will the senator yield?
Yes.
Specifically, Senator, with respect to line 32, 35, and 40, and specifically sub B, it says these are examples of businesses, et cetera, which may be subject to regulatory fees, and that's the current law, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and so with respect to this bill, it now removes taxi cab, limousine operators altogether, and then moves shooting galleries, firearm ranges, and firearm dealers to the subsection that is not subject to regulatory fees. Can you just explain that in terms of the change in the law?
Certainly, Senator. Thank you. If you're familiar, we several years ago have passed several bills that bring parity between taxi cab, limousines, Uber, Lyft, and those type companies. So it's striking from here because we've created a separate structure for them. This is a cleanup of the code. And the same thing, we do not have that for shooting galleries or firearm dealers. This is a cleanup of the code as well as boxing and promoters. It's stuff that's not being used in an effort to do a cleanup while we're doing all the other regulatory areas. This was in the same section just to have a good cleanup and hopefully make things more efficient.
Will the senator yield?
Certainly.
With respect to the shooting ranges, firearm dealers, I remember the bill we passed with respect to Uber and the rideshare stuff. I'm not as familiar with saying that firearm dealers and the like would not be subject to local regulatory fees. Do you have, can you point me to that code section?
I don't believe there is a necessary code section today, nor do I personally believe they should have additional regulatory fees added upon them. So I think this is just a cleanup with all the other work we have done over time. But what we don't want to do is have local governments over-regulating.
It's just one more follow-up?
Yes.
So with respect to that, then moving the shooting galleries, firearm ranges, and firearm dealers out of the section that says there can be regulatory fees to the section that says there cannot be regulatory fees, that actually works a substantive difference to existing law, which will now not allow local governments to regulate shooting galleries, ranges, and also dealers.
That is correct, Senator, and it is my interest that they shouldn't be doing that to begin with. What we don't want is excessive regulation in any level of government.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you continue to yield?
For one more.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 20th with a question.
Thank you. Does the senator yield?
Certainly, for my friend.
Senator, if I'm reading this correctly, it looks like basically anybody, whether you have a business license or getting a permit for a construction project, you can contest the amount they're charging you for your business license or your permit. Am I understanding that correctly?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You can do that today. Well, your only outlet to do that is to take a local government to court. This creates a mechanism for them to do that directly with that governing authority if they believe that cost of that permit is too high. Hopefully that will be certainly the exception and not the rule. We have seen certain cases, as an example, where there's a $1,300 permit for someone putting in a $1,000 water heater. That doesn't work, right? So in this case, hopefully, and I believe many of our governing authorities are doing a great job, this would not impact them at all, but it certainly would support all those small businesses that I mentioned earlier.
Would you further yield?
Yes.
Isn't it true that where I live anyway, I've never heard of having to get a permit for replacing a hot water heater?
Well, Senator, if you're doing a rehab on a home and you're doing extensive amount of work, or if you're doing a new construction build or things of that nature, there are excessive amounts of regulations that come into play. And that can be through a variety of different things, as mentioned earlier. That could be air conditioning, it could be plumbing, it could be metal, it could be electricians, you name it.
All right, one final question, if you don't mind.
I would yield.
I'm for less government. I do think some governments in some parts of the state may be overzealous with some of their regulations. I've got I'm proud to say mighty good local government where I represent, but I'm afraid we're making a process that, to me, and the best way I know how to explain it in the way I talk is it's just pretty clunky seeming to me. And so am I reading this correctly that if I think a permit or a business license or any kind of regulatory fee is too high, I can then go to the governing authority, and according to line 121, the local government will then have to undertake a study of such fee. How do you visualize as this study, this fee study?
Well,
and
if
what
you look,
would that cost the local government to perform a fee study?
Certainly, Senator. I think if you go up to line 100, it begins and it talks about how do they come up with the estimate of the fees to begin with, right? They can use it by the hour for how much time it takes. They can do it by the square foot, and they can use the ICC standards, which is really the standard in all those industries. However, if they came up with an exorbitant fee, then they have to sit down with that person in good faith and say, you know what? We estimated this to be 100 hours. It actually took us 6. We probably did overcharge you. So the question comes down to is, who do you support? well, I think we got to start with the very small business owner, the lifeblood of Georgia that makes us the #1 place to do business, that goes out there every day and provides jobs and opportunities for those that are working in all these industries. It helps them to give back to their communities, helps them to buy homes and to buy cars and do all the things that makes our economies run. So to have a little transparency and accountability with a local government to support our small business, I think is really good practice.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator has yielded the well.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 36th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I rise to ask you to seriously consider voting red on House Bill 302, and I'll take a minute to express my concerns, many of which you've heard in questions that have been raised to my friend, the sponsor of the bill for us here in the Senate, my friend from the 56th. First of all, let's be very clear. The Georgia Municipal Association, the County Government Commissioners Association, ACCG, and the Building Officials Association are all opposed to this bill. And you might find that of interest when you go back home after the session and they want to know the outcome of this effort. Because this bill will require cities across the state, not one or two, but cities and towns across the state, to undergo the process of recalculating and reestablishing their fee schedules and permitting systems. And recalculating fee schedules is a difficult and uncertain process. And guess who pays the bill for that when the government is asked to take that on? If the fee schedules aren't calculated correctly, city regulatory offices can be underfunded, which threatens these services provided for the health and the welfare of the community. Changes to the city permitting software necessitated by the bill would be costly and require cities to either pay for these changes from the general fund or raise fees to cover the cost. You know, it does cost something to run government. And it's incumbent, I think, on responsible officials to support the funding of the state, but also local and county government. And this bill removes the ability to use the cost of the project for other construction activity without providing a reasonable alternative. It's problematic for large-scale renovations, closely resembling new construction. The likely result of this bill is going to create, now this I think is very important, an unfair burden on small builders, developers, and homeowners, causing extremely high costs while only reducing fees to the very large developers and builders. Now, you've heard from some in the halls who want to pass this bill that there was some sort of miscommunication that meant that people got called out and informed that the City of Atlanta is neutral on this bill. Well, they're not. We heard testimony in the committee from, I believe, an official from Rome, Georgia, who is involved in this process of permitting there, and talked about the cost and the months that it will take to retool software and have software redesigned in order to meet the what's in this bill. So I say to you, this is one of those bills with a massive impact all across the state. And you recognize the ripple effect when you go home and you hear from your local officials in county after county after county. That's when you'll realize the effect, when those local officials will say, this is what's been served up to us to do by House Bill 302. We're not in the appropriate and wise way to handle this is to let this bill be studied, let this issue be studied, come next year with all the stakeholders, there are many stakeholders in this process, and come next year and be judicious as you approach this decision. You know, the old days we used to call it, when a bill was problematic, it's full of ants and boogers. You know, there's more to it than meets the eye. We've all heard of that. And that's in this bill. That's in this bill. And let me just add one footnote. I just find it problematic that people weep bitter tears about the gun violence that we see in our society, across the state, across the nation, and yet deliberately remove gun dealers from the ability of local government to have any regulatory authority. What do you think you're doing? And I don't think you will. I think that strong minds and strong backbones will inform us to vote no on this bill, not now and forevermore, but let's address this in a measured, balanced way. If you've got a grievance as developers with one city, don't pass a sweeping bill that turns the whole apple cart over for all the cities of our state, costing money that we don't need to spend and should not spend. I will yield the well and ask you to really think and exercise, great wisdom as this bill is called up for a vote, because you really don't want to vote yes and go home and deeply regret that you voted yes because of the very negative impacts on your local government. Thank you for your attention. I'm going to take my seat and vote red on HB 302, not against all the issues raised, not against all the concerns, but that this is a hasty and speedy process for something that would have this much impact on all our local governments. I will yield for questions.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 41st with a question.
I'll take one. Thank you. Yes.
Senator, do you yield?
I yield.
So if we no longer regulate, or if local municipalities are not allowed to regulate shooting ranges, what is in place to make sure that a shooting range is set up to make sure that everybody is safe, to protect people who are beyond the gun range? What system is in place to ensure the safety of a gun range if we are no longer regulating them?
The senator from the 41st raises a great question, and it exactly goes to my point that there are consequences in this bill that you may not be considering right now, but they are there, and you would have unregulated firing ranges and no ability of local authorities to have any safety measures put in place around them. So thank you for that question, and it's yet one more example of the lack of wisdom that we demonstrate if we pass this bill today. It can be studied, it can be addressed, bring all the stakeholders to the table, and look for solutions that serve us well. Thank you, and I yield the well.
For what purpose does the senator from the 56 rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd ask unanimous consent to put House Bill 302 on the table.
Senator from the 56th has asked for unanimous consent that House Bill 302 be placed on the table. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and House Bill 302 is placed on the table. What purpose does the senator from the 51st rise?
I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 49th for business outside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 49th is excused. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of House Bill 620?
House Bill 620, a bill by Representatives Leverett of the 33rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 29, Chapter 4 of Title 51 and Article 6 of Chapter 6 of Title 53 of the OCGA relating to guardian and ward, wrongful death and bond, respectfully, so as to clarify and revise procedures and requirements for the payment of certain settlements involving claims of minors and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Judiciary recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Strickland of the 17th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Judiciary offers the following substitute to House Bill 620, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 29, Chapter 4 of Title 51 and Article 6 of Chapter 6 of Title 53 of the OCGA relating to guardian and ward, wrongful death, and bond, respectfully, so as to clarify and revise procedures and requirements for the payment of certain settlements involving claims of minors and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 50th to present House Bill 620.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to bring House Bill 620. House Bill 620 is a bill that deals with minor settlements. Right now in the state of Georgia, there's a rule where if a settlement is over $15,000, you have to have court approval. We're going to raise that to $25,000. Reasoning is mainly inflation. This number has not been risen since 2004 at least. The number used to track the minimum limits in the state for car insurance, which was $10,000. That was changed in 1997. Now we're just trying to bring that back. And so the $25,000 number is also in line with the minimum limits of the state. This is a good bill, has a support from judges. It was voted 164 to nothing out of the House, and I would appreciate your support. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to yield.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 29th with a question.
Does the senator yield?
I do.
Senator, can you briefly explain to me how economics has impacted to go from 15 to 25?
Well, if you've been to the gas pump lately, you'll see how inflation has obviously impacted. But you know, in 1997, just based on the minor settlements, the minimum coverage for car insurance was $10,000 in the state of Georgia, and the minor settlement was also $10,000. The minimum limits were raised, and then after that, between 97 and I believe 2004, sometime in there, this was actually raised to 15. What we've seen is, you know, with the increased number of settlements, a backlog in the court. It's just time to change it. Obviously, there's a time to raise. You know, when you look at any area of law, there's just a time to raise it, and we feel like this is the appropriate time. It's actually, I think, too late, but raising this up to $25,000 is appropriate at this time.
Senator, further yield?
I do.
Senator, in your comparison of the gas pump to this, are we comparing a product to a service?
I'm sorry.
Are we comparing a product? Are you saying the product is fuel? I understand. Are we comparing a product to a service, as in attorney fees, or are we comparing a product to a product such as the premiums on insurance policies?
Yeah, I think we're just looking at the value of a dollar and where the value of the dollar goes now versus, you know, back in 2004.
Thank you, Senator.
You're welcome.
You have no more questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 46th to speak to the measure.
Won't be that long. Thank you, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate. I'm here to speak against this bill, and I tried to figure a way to amend it to make it make more sense, but I can't figure a way to do that without just changing the entire gist of the bill. I think to understand this, I want you to know what we're dealing with. These are settlements being made on behalf of minor children. They don't necessarily even involve the court system other than a probate court to approve a natural guardian as the conservator of the money obtained in a settlement on behalf of a minor child. If a lawsuit has been filed, which sometimes a suit is filed before a settlement is reached, current law requires the trial judge to approve that settlement. And if the settlement is for more than $15,000, that the guardian or the parent of the child be sworn in front of the probate court judge as the conservator of those funds to be held on behalf of the minor child. And they then file a return on an annual basis showing what they've done with the money. If they want to spend some of the money on behalf of the child, they ask the permission or the consent of the probate court judge. This changes that law to allow those settlements up to $25,000 to be done without any court supervision, approval, or filings with the probate court to make sure that the money is safe for the children. I do not buy this argument about inflation, because you need to know what these settlement funds are for. They are for the pain and suffering that that child endured, caused by another person. The parent of the child has the claim for the medical expenses because that was their obligation. Now, I can buy that there may have been an increase in medical expenses over the years. That's not included in these settlements. The minor child doesn't have a claim for the medical bills because that was the parent's claim. They don't have a claim for lost wages because they're not employed at the time. It is only for the injuries to them, the pain, the disfigurement, the harm that they've endured. And this money needs to be saved for those children when they turn 18 years age. The way we guarantee that it is safe for them is to have a conservator appointed by the probate court and file annual reports to show that the money is being held for that child. And it also has a sort of a checkpoint here that if the case is in litigation, that the trial judge has to approve the settlement to make sure that it's a fair settlement on behalf of that child. This eliminates that requirement up to $25,000. I don't like this legislation because I think we should protect our children and make sure that the funds that they deserve because of damages done to them are saved and preserved for them. One other exception is that if there is a need to spend these funds on behalf of the minor child before they turn 18, the conservator can ask the probate court judge to approve those expenditures. So it doesn't prohibit a family from taking care of a child's needs through these funds if it's approved by the court. For those reasons, I humbly ask that you reject this legislation. The law was implemented for a reason, and it's a good reason, and I like to keep it the way it is. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 6th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of this bill, and specifically because I have dealt with these types of settlements. And just like the senator from the 50th said, this really is in line with the minimum limits in terms of car insurance. And so what you're wanting to do many times is you have a situation or a car wreck, for example, that has caused significant damage. Whether to the parents, to the property, to the child, but because of the limits, those are what are tendered over because the insurance company wants to be able to avoid a bad faith claim. In terms of protecting the children and the like, what we're talking about with respect to the senator from the 46th, all we're talking about really is $10,000 difference right now. Because right now, 15K and under are not subject to court approval. So what you're talking about is $15,000 plus one up to $25,000, and that is the only change. And that really is just subject to where the cap is in terms of minimum insurance that will be tendered by the insurance company to take care of these kids. So with respect to that, I think in terms of probate courts too, I think they would appreciate not having to deal with this because really it is almost pro forma most of the time when you're talking about such low levels of dollars. But also with respect to that, like I said, just $10,000 that are congruent with the insurance minimum limits. Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 620? Would the senator from the 50th like to close the debate? He waives. The questions on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee sub? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 46, the nays are 4. This bill having received the requisite constitutional majority is therefore passed by substitute. Ms. Secretary, can you please read the caption of House Bill 1088?
House Bill 1088, a bill by Representative Gunter of the 8th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 7 of Article 5 of Chapter 3 of Title 44 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated, relating to miscellaneous provisions regarding timeshare projects and programs so as to authorize non-judicial foreclosure of timeshare estates, to provide for notice, to provide for transfer of title, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Judiciary recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Strickland of the 17th District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 50th to speak to House Bill 1088.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to bring House Bill 1088. This was a bill that was brought earlier in the session relating to non-judicial foreclosure on timeshares estates. Right now, in the state of Georgia, you have to go through a lengthy judicial process to foreclose on a timeshare. It's very expensive. What this does is it creates a non-judicial foreclosure, saves money, and protects Georgians. If there's any questions, I'm happy to yield.
Don't see any questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the bill.
Does any of the senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 1088? The chair sees none. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Ms. Secretary, can you please read the caption to House Bill 1219?
House Bill 1219, a bill by Representatives Houston of the 170th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 11 of Title 43 of the OCGA relating to general provisions relative to dentists, dental hygienists, and dental assistants so as to revise the composition of the Georgia Board of Dentistry and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Watson of the 1st District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 1st to present House Bill 1219.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm presenting House Bill 1219. This revises the composition of the Georgia Board of Dentistry. It increases the number from 11 to 17 and makes it so that there will be 2 dental hygienists on the board. There will be one of those 17 increased. The percentages actually for dental hygiene is increased, but this has to do more with dental student education, becoming dentist, and that's where we are. Mr. President, I would ask for your favorable consideration for House Bill 1219. Thank you.
Senator has yielded the well. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 1219? The chair sees none. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 48, the nays are 3. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. What purpose does the senator from the 16th rise? He waves. Ms. Secretary, can you please read the caption to House Bill 1381?
House Bill 1381, a bill by Representative Stevens of the 164th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 80 of Title 36 of the OCGA relating to general provisions applicable to counties, municipal corporations, and other governmental entities, so as to require Water and Sewer Authority board members to complete yearly continuing training courses and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State and Local Governmental Operations recommend that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Anderson of the 24th District, Chairman. Mr. President, Senators Mullis of the 53rd and others offer the following amendment to amend House Bill 1381 by inserting after funding on line 5 the following to authorize waiver of training requirement, by removing the close quote remark on line 21, by inserting the following after line 21. C, the training requirement in this code section may be waived at the discretion of the Commissioner of the Department of Community Affairs. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 24th to speak to House Bill 1381 and Amendment Number 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. All this bill is about the local water and sewer authorities, that they would have to have a 4-hour training course before they become a board member. And we have a friendly amendment from our chairman of rules. I'm in favor of it.
You don't appear to have any questions. Does any of the senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 1381 or Amendment Number 1? The chair sees none. All right, we'll take up the adoption of Amendment Number 1. All those in favor of adoption, is there objection to adoption of Amendment Number 1? There's no objection, and Amendment Number 1 is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The questions on the passage of the bill as amended. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 48, the nays are 5. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed as amended. For what purpose does the senator from the 13th rise? He waves. I'll point you to the appropriations chair. I think you might have something to do with that. It's like dropping a trail of breadcrumbs over here. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Resolution 723?
Senate Resolution 723, a resolution by Senators Jackson of the Second and others, a resolution recognizing and commending Thomas DeCarlo Calloway, better known as CeeLo Green, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Rules recommend that this resolution do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Mullis of the 53rd District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 2nd to present the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of this esteemed body, we have a good feel-good resolution, Senate Resolution 723, to recognize and commend Thomas DeCarlo Calloway. Mr. Calloway is an award-winning singer. He's in the Georgia Music Hall of Fame. He has produced songs such as Crazy, Kung Fu Fighting, Fools for Love, and the senator from the 53rd favorite, and the senator from the 15th favorite, Pimps Don't Cry. He has a long, consistent record as a dynamic rapper and recording artist. His name is Thomas Calloway. We know him as CeeLo Green, a Georgian, but more importantly, a public servant. CeeLo Green is an adjunct professor now. He is an adjunct professor. He runs a nonprofit group that helps young people in the greater Atlanta community. He is a statesman, but what he has is a heart to give back to this community. For Georgia's children, CeeLo Green has been giving back. So this is a simple resolution. I hope you all vote in favor of it. And remember, in the words of the senator from the 15th, pimps don't cry. Mr. President, I yield the will.
Does any other senator has yielded the well? Does any other senator wish to speak for or against Senate Resolution 723? The chair sees none. Is there objection to agree on the report of the committee which is favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the adoption of the resolution. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the adoption of the resolution, the yeas are 45, the nays are 3. This resolution, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. For what purpose does the senator from the first rise?
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that Senate Rule 4-2.1 be suspended to allow a committee report to be read and allow a bill to be second read.
Mr. Secretary, will you please read the committee report?
Read the caption.
House Bill 1013, a bill by Representatives Ralston of the 7th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend titles 15, 20, 31, 33, 37, 45, and 49 of the OCGA relating to courts, education, health, insurance, mental health, public officers and employees, and social services, respectively, so as to implement the recommendations of the Georgia Behavioral Health Reform and Innovation Commission and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services recommend this bill to pass. Respectfully submitted, by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Watson, the 1st District Chairman.
Senator from the 1st has asked for unanimous consent that the rules be suspended for a committee report for House Bill 1013 be read and allowed to a bill to be second read. Is there objection? The chair hears none. Mr. Secretary, will you please read the committee report?
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services has had under consideration the following legislation, has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation that House Bill 1013 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Watson of the 1st District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President. House Bill 1013, a bill by Representatives Ralston of the 7th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend titles 15, 20, 31, 33, 37, 45, and 49 of the OCGA relating to courts, education, health, insurance, mental health, public officers and employees, and social services, respectively, so as to implement the recommendations of the Georgia Behavioral Health Reform and Innovation Commission to provide for related matters and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Mr. Secretary, will you read for the first time House bills and resolutions?
House Bill 797, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act to grant the residents of Clark County and Clark County School District upon their homesteads an exemption.
Go.
House Bill 1600, a bill to be entitled an act to authorize the governing authority of the city of Flemington to levy an excise.
Go.
House Bill 1601, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act revising, superseding, and consolidating the laws creating and governing the Board of Commissioners of Eccles County.
Go.
House Bill 1602, a bill to be entitled an act to establish the Board of Elections and Registration of Murray County, Georgia, to provide for effective dates in automatic.
Go.
That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the majority leader for a motion. Actually, the chair recognizes the distinguished senator from the 37th for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate stand adjourned until 10 a.m. on Wednesday, March 30th, 2022.
I could listen to that accent all day long. Mr. Secretary, do you have any announcements?
The Rules Committee will meet immediately upon adjournment in 4:50 today. The Higher Education Committee will meet at 1 p.m. in 4:50 today. The Insurance and Labor Committee will meet in Mez 1 at 1 p.m. today. The Health and Human Services Committee will meet at 2 p.m. today in 4:50. The Special Judiciary Committee will meet in 307 of the CLOB at 2 p.m. today. The Regulated Industries and Utilities Committee will meet in 3 p.m. at 3 p.m. at 4:50 today. The Judiciary Committee will meet in 307 of the CLOB at 4 p.m. today. The Ethics Committee will meet in 310 of the CLOB at 5 p.m. today. And both the Public Safety Committees and the Finance Committee meetings are canceled for today. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the majority leader for an announcement.
Thank you. I meant to say this morning, as of last Friday, our hospitalizations due to COVID were at the lowest point since the pandemic started. So I want to thank all the healthcare providers, and I know that we have a bunch in this room, that have taken care of our friends and family. And, you know, unfortunately, we did lose too many during the entire 2-year pandemic thing. But the fact that we are now at 3%, when at one point we were at 36% of hospitalizations were due to COVID-related illnesses, says we're moving in the right direction. So great job, everybody.
Chair recognizes the distinguished senator from Ocilla for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, on your desk, you'll see an invitation to the Legislative Sportsman Caucus. We have an event tomorrow evening at Stotter's Gun Range. It's from 5 to 8. If you would like to come, please inform my office. We would love to have you come join us and spend some time with fellow sportsmen. And if you're not a sportsman, we'd love to have you join us anyway, so we can encourage you to become a sportsman. So with that, Mr. President, I yield the will.
The authentically spoken senator from the 37th has moved that this Senate stand adjourned until Wednesday, March 30th, 2022 at 10 a.m. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Those that are opposed signify by saying no. And the ayes actually have it, and the Senate stands adjourned.